Quito, formerly San Francisco de Quito, is the capital city of Ecuador, and at an elevation of 2,850 meters above sea level. It is the highest official capital city in the world. It is located in the Guayllabamba River basin, on the eastern slopes of Pichincha, an active stratovolcano in the Andes Mountains. With a population of 2,671,191 according to the last census, Quito is the second most populous city in Ecuador, after Guayaquil. It is also the capital of the Pichincha province and the seat of the Metropolitan District of Quito. The canton recorded a population of 2,239,191 residents in the 2010 national census. In 2008, the city was designated as the headquarters of the Union of South American Nations. The historic center of Quito has one of the largest, least altered and best preserved historic centers in the Americas. Quito, along with Krakow, were the first World Cultural Heritage Sites declared by UNESCO in 1978. The central square of Quito is located about 25 kilometers south of the equator. The city itself extends to within about 1 kilometer of zero latitude. A monument and museum marking the general location of the equator is known locally as La Mitad del Mundo, to avoid confusion, as the word Ecuador is Spanish for equator. History. Pre-Columbian period. Quito's origins date back to the first millennium, when the Quitu tribe occupied the area and eventually formed a commercial center. According to Juan de Velasco's 1767 book Historia del Reino de Quito, the Quitu were conquered by the Caras tribe, who founded the Kingdom of Quito about 980 AD. For more than 4 centuries, Quito was ruled under the kings. Caras and their allies were narrowly defeated in the epic battles of Teocafas and Tixan in 1462, by an army of 250,000 led by Tupac Inca, the son of the Emperor of the Incas. After several decades of consolidation, the Kingdom of Quito became integrated into the Incan Empire. In 1534, the Caras, Quitu people were conquered by the Spanish. Colonial period indigenous resistance to the Spanish invasion continued during 1534, with the conquistador Diego de Almagro founding Santiago de Quito on August 15, 1534. Later to be renamed San Francisco de Quito on August 28, 1534. The city was later moved to its present location and was refounded on 6 December 1534 by 204 settlers led by Sebastián de Benalcázar, who captured Rumanahui and effectively ended any organized resistance. Rumanahui was then executed on January 10, 1535. On March 14, 1541, Quito was declared a city and on February 14, 1556, was given the title Muy Noble y Muy Leal Ciudad de San Francisco de Quito. Starting at this point its urban evolution. In 1563, Quito became the seat of a real audiencia of Spain and became part of the Viceroyalty of Peru, until 1717 after the audiencia was part of a newly created Viceroyalty of Nueva Granada. Its administration on both viceroyalties remained to Quito. As with other places colonized by the Spanish, the colonizers promptly established Roman Catholicism in Quito. The first church was in fact built even before the city had been officially founded. In January 1535, the San Francisco convent was constructed, the first of about 20 churches and convents built during the colonial period. period, the Spanish converted the indigenous population to Christianity and used them as labor for construction. In 1843, after nearly 300 years of Spanish colonization, Quito was a city of about 10,000 inhabitants. On August 10, 1809, an independence movement from Spanish domination started in Quito. On the date, a plan for government was established that placed Juan Pío Montúfar as president with various other prominent figures in other positions of government. However, this initial movement was ultimately defeated on August 2, 1810, when colonial troops came from Lima, Peru, killing the leaders of the uprising along with about 200 settlers. A chain of conflicts concluded on May 24, 1822, when Antonio José de Sucre, under the command of Simón Bolívar, led troops into the Battle of Pichincha. The victory marked the independence of Quito and the surrounding areas. Republican Ecuador. In 1833, members of the Society of Free Inhabitants of Quito were assassinated by the government after they conspired against it, and on March 6, 1845, the Marxist Revolution began. Later, in 1875, the country's president, Gabriel García Moreno, was assassinated in Quito. 2 years later, in 1877, Archbishop José Ignacio Checa Guayllabamba was killed by poisoning while he was celebrating Mass. In 1882, insurgents arose against the regime of dictator Ignacio de Veintimilla. However, this did not end the violence that was occurring throughout the country. On July 9, 1883, the liberal commander Eloy Alfaro participated in the Battle of Guayaquil, and later, after more conflict, became the president of Ecuador on September 4, 1895. Upon completing his second term in 1911, he moved to Europe. When he returned to Ecuador in 1912 and attempted a return to power, he was arrested on January 28, 1912, thrown in prison, and assassinated by a mob that he had stormed the prison. His body was dragged through the streets of Quito to a city park, where it was burned. In 1932, the 4 Days War broke out. This was a civil war that followed the election of Neptali Boniface and the subsequent realization that he carried a Peruvian passport. On February 12, 1949, a realistic broadcast of H.G. Wells' novel The War of the Worlds led to citywide panic and the deaths of more than 20 people who died in fires set by mobs. 21st century. In 2011, the city's population was 2,239,191 people. Since 2002, the city has begun renewing its historical center and also demolished the old airport and built a new Mariscal Sucre International Airport located 45 minutes from central Quito. Between 2003 and 2004, the ecologically friendly bus lines of the Metrobus were constructed, traversing the city from the north to the south. Many avenues and roads were extended and enlarged. Depressed passages were constructed, and roads were restructured geometrically to increase the flow of traffic. A new subway system is currently under construction. Geography. Quito is located in the northern highlands of Ecuador in the Guayllabamba River basin. The city is built on a long plateau lying on the east flanks of the Pichincha volcano. The valley of Guayllabamba River where Quito lies is flanked by volcanoes, some of them snow-capped and visible from the city on a clear day. Quito is the closest capital city to the equator. Nearby volcanoes. Quito's closest volcano is Pichincha, looming over the western side of the city. Quito is also the only capital in the world to be directly menaced by an active volcano. Pichincha volcano has several summits, among them Ruku Pichincha at 4,700 meters above sea level and Wawe Pichincha at 4,794 meters. Wawe Pichincha is active and being monitored by volcanologists at the Geophysical Institute of the National Polytechnic University. The largest eruption occurred in 1660 when more than 25 centimeters of ash covered the city. There were 3 minor eruptions in the 19th century. The latest eruption was recorded on October 5, 1999, when a few puffs of smoke and a large amount of ash were deposited on the city. Activity in other nearby volcanoes also can affect the city. In November 2002, after an eruption in the volcano of Aventador, the city was showered with a layer of fine ash particles to a depth of several centimeters. The volcanoes on the Central Cordillera, east of Quito, surrounding the Guayllabamba Valley include Cotopaxi, Sincolagua, Antisana and Cayambe. Some of the volcanoes of the Western Cordillera to the west of the Guayllabamba Valley, as well as Pichincha, include Aliniza, Atacazo, and Pelulawa. Climate. Under the Köppen climate classification, Quito has a subtropical highland climate. Because of its elevation and its closeness to the equator, Quito has a fairly constant cool climate. The average temperature at noon is 18.7 degrees Celsius with a normal nighttime low of 9.3 degrees Celsius. The annual average temperature is 14 degrees Celsius. The city has only 2 seasons, dry and wet. The dry season, June through September, is referred to as summer. The wet season, October through May, is referred to as winter. Annual precipitation, depending on location, is about 1,000 millimeters. Because of its elevation, Quito receives some of the greatest solar radiation in the world, sometimes reaching 24 in the UV index. The fact that Quito lies almost on the equator means that high-pressure systems are extremely rare. Pressure is stable, so very low-pressure systems are also rare. From July 1, 2010 to June 30, 2011, the lowest pressure recorded was 998.2 HPa, and the highest was 1015.2 HPa. Despite the absence of high pressure, Quito can still experience settled weather. Generally, the highest pressure is around midnight and the lowest in the mid-afternoon. Demographics. This is population figure for the city proper as determined by the last census conducted in 2001. The number does not reflect the population of the whole canton, which also includes the surrounding rural parishes, which are separate from the city. Population: 1,397,698. Number of households: 419,845. Illiteracy rate: 3.6%. Unemployment rate: 9%. Underemployment rate: 44%. Topographical zones. Quito is divided into 3 areas, separated by hills. Central houses the colonial old city. Southern is mainly industrial and residential, and a working-class housing area. Northern is the modern Quito, with high-rise buildings, shopping centers, the financial district, and upper-class residential areas and some working-class housing areas. Economy. Quito is the largest city in contribution to national GDP, and the second highest in per capita income after Cuenca. Quito has the highest level of tax collection in Ecuador, exceeding the national 57% per year 2009, currently being the most important economic region of the country, 63 as the latest study conducted by the Central Bank of Ecuador. TAME, an airline of Ecuador, has its headquarters in Quito. Petroecuador, the largest company in the country and one of the largest in Latin America, is headquartered in Quito. Headquarters and regional offices of many national and international financial institutions. Oil corporations and international businesses are also located in Quito, making it a world-class business city in the world according to GAWC Global Cities Report, which measures a city's integration into the World City Network. Quito is ranked as a beta city, as an important world-class metropolis which is instrumental in linking its region or state into the world economy. Politics. Governance. Quito is governed by a mayor and a 15-member city council. The mayor is elected to a 5-year term and can be re-elected. The position also doubles as mayor of the Metropolitan District of Quito. The current mayor is Mauricio Rodas. Urban parishes. In Ecuador, cantons are subdivided into parishes. These subdivisions are called parishes because they were originally used by the Catholic Church, but, along with the secularization and liberalization of the Ecuadorian state, the political parishes were spun off the ones used by the Church. Parishes are called urban if they are within the boundaries of the seat of their corresponding canton, and rural if they are outside of those boundaries. Inside Quito, the way in which the city is subdivided into urban parishes depends on the organizations which use those parishes. The urban parishes of different types are not necessarily coterminous nor the same in number and name. As of 2008, the municipality of Quito divided the city into 32 urban parishes. These parishes, which are used by the municipality for administrative purposes, are also known as cabildos since 2001. Since the times of the Metropolitan District of Quito, parishes of this type are also grouped into larger divisions known as municipal zones. These parishes are as follows: ecclesiastical parishes. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Quito divides the city into 167 parishes, which are grouped into 17 zones. Transportation. Public transport. The Metrobus network, also known as Red Integrated Transport Publico, is the bus rapid transit system running in Quito, and it goes through the city from south to north. It's divided into 3 sections: the Green Line, the Red Line, and the Blue Line. In addition to the bus rapid transit system, there are many buses running in the city. The buses have both a name and a number, and they have a fixed route. Taxicabs are all yellow, and they have meters that show the fare. There are nearly 8,800 registered taxicabs. In August 2012, the municipality of Quito government established a municipal bicycle sharing system called BGQ Road Transport. Although public transportation is the primary form of travel in the city, including fleets of taxis that constantly cross the roadways, the use of private vehicles has increased substantially during the past decade. Because of growing road congestion in many areas, there were plans to construct a light rail system, which were conceived to replace the northern portion of the troll. These plans have been ruled out and replaced by the construction of the first metro line in 2012. It is expected to be operational by 2016, joining the existing public transportation network. Roads, avenues and streets. Because Quito is about 40 kilometers long and 5 kilometers at its widest, most of the important avenues of the city extend from north to south. The 2 main motorways that go from the northern part of the city to the southern are Avenue Oriental on the eastern hills that border the city, and Avenue Occidental on the western side of the city on the Pichincha volcano. The street Tender Agosto also runs north to south through most of the city, running down the middle of it. The historic center of the city is based on a grid pattern, despite the hills, with the streets Venezuela, Chile, Garcia Moreno, and Guayaquil being the most important. Air transport. Mariscal Sucre International Airport serves as the city's principal airport for passenger travel and freight. The airport is located 18 kilometers east of the city's center in the Tababella parish. It began operations on February 20, 2013, replacing the old Mariscal Sucre International Airport located 10 kilometers north of the city center within city limits. The old airport was replaced due to tall buildings and nighttime fog that made landing from the south difficult. The old airport has become a metropolitan park. There is a railroad that goes through the southern part of Quito and passes through the Estación de Chimbocal. It is managed by the Empresa de Ferrocarriles Ecuatorianos. This form of transport is nowadays used mostly for tourism. Subway, a major construction project, began in 2012 for a 23 km metro subway system in Quito. Phase 1, currently underway, entails the construction of stations at La Magdalena and El Labrador. Phase 2 will involve 13 more stations, a depot and subsystems. The project is expected to carry 400,000 passengers per day and to cost USD $1.5 billion, with finance coming from the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the European Investment Bank and the Development Bank of Latin America.